Hey everybody, it's Ben here, founder of MakePad, a platform teaching individuals and companies how to build custom software workflows and tools without writing code. This show explores the people behind the no-code tools and the stories of folks using them to automate work and launch companies. Today joining me on the show is AJ from Card. AJ, welcome.
Hey Ben, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, I feel. Do you want to just introduce yourself briefly and sort of give a quick overview of what Card is?
Sure. I'm AJ. I built Card, which launched at this point like 4 years ago. It is a tool for building one-page websites for pretty much anything. At least that's what it was originally built as. And as I'm sure Ben can attest to, it has since kind of gone on to do uh, a lot more than just that, shall we say. So yeah, it's been one of the tools, maybe not the biggest tool in the no code movement, I guess you'd call it at this point, but it's certainly been getting some play in there and it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, we briefly talked before we started recording that like Card was probably the first tool that I ever used to go down this no code rabbit hole, and here we are, like you said, 4 years later, I suppose.
Yeah.
So yeah, you said that people it was originally built as simple one page sites. How was has your thinking changed? Are you like more inclined to lean towards the no code movement, like what's happening there and stuff now as you see it, or is it still sort of focusing on the one page sites?
I mean, at this point, it's pretty much whatever people want to use it for. Like, I don't want to force it in one direction or another. I think just adding the features that users request basically has been what I've done from the start, and it's worked very well. And so, yeah, there've been a lot of requests for more no code type features, and so those are the things that I was working on up until like all this crazy stuff started happening the last few weeks, and I had to kind of like pivot to scale because things kind of just got nuts. Uh, but yeah, the it's almost become sort of like a Swiss Army knife of building just simple things that go on the web, whether it's a one page website for whatever or something a good bit more sophisticated, using, integrations with like Airtable or Zapier and whatnot. Assuming I pronounced that correctly. I'm pretty sure I didn't.
No, I believe it's Zapier, as in happier.
Zapier.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Zapier.
that's what they say. Yeah,
Zapier. Oh, I feel like such a tool, man.
loads of people say it differently. I think it tends to be people from the US who call it Zapier, which is funny because it's like I think all of the founding team are US. So um, yeah, I mean,
Well, I mean that's par for the course for us. So no, yeah,
definitely, yeah,
that's how we are.
their own fault. Yeah, so I mean, Card is just the first thing I think of when someone says to me, "What? How do I build a website? How do I build a simple like site? What's the quickest way for me to build something?" Um, like you said, there's a ton of ways to just like spin something up really quickly, and then I feel like maybe I'm biased because I just know some of the trickier ways to use Card. I suppose I
Yeah.
remember I was definitely
to to put it lightly, yeah.
I was definitely pushing it to its limits for a while. I think I was like doing stuff that you were just like, what even is this? Like, how do you even do this
Yeah.
stuff? But um, and actually, I did a course which was called Built with Card, which have basically turned into MakerPad. So it was like on the very early sort of point of when MakerPad was born. But yeah, I mean, there's like I've done some projects around this the whole COVID-19 stuff right now because people need
Yeah,
simple
that's been
solutions
huge.
and need them quickly. So even things like we've put together a big, basically a presentation that shows exactly how to set up certain things, and Card is frequently one of the things we use in there to show people, look, if you need to set up an online ordering system for your garden center, you can use this. And one of the ones I think is pretty interesting anyway is like having a card website and then having looks like two tabs. There's basically two separate sections. Is it section breaks?
Yeah, section breaks.
On the page that are basically like flip between like volunteers and like those businesses in need. So
Right.
sort of like you can add yourself to a list, and it makes it feel like a two-sided mini marketplace, if you will. So
Yeah.
what's been going on for Card in this crazy time? Then you said you've sort of had to pivot some stuff and think about some things.
Yeah. So I mean, Card's been on kind of like a natural incline over the last since it launched, pretty much. But in the recent, because of all the stuff that's going on right now, I think it's just been this. I wasn't expecting a massive surge. I was like, oh, we might see a bit more traffic, a bit more, few more signups and whatnot. But like, we're up 100% over last year. Like, it's insane. And like, I mentioned earlier, I was kind of working on these other features that I had laid out earlier. I think in January, I tweeted out some of the big things I was working on for this year. But then this came along, and I had to like out of nowhere, because I still handle support myself. Out of nowhere, though, like my support load like doubled pretty much overnight. Like I was getting way more inquiries. I'm like, what the hell's happening here? And then I noticed like revenue was doubling. Everything was just doubling. The number of sites, the number of new users. And I was like, oh, this has happened a lot. Again, I mentioned that we're on a linear incline, but then suddenly it just kind of shot up. And so some of my plans had to be reorganized around accommodating the scale. So me handling support on my own right now, I don't think that's tenable if it's going to keep up like this. So I have to build out a proper support ticket system, all the stuff that goes with that. I'm probably going to be hiring someone soon to take over some of that. It's just, earlier I had to upgrade our server capacity to deal with stuff. It was just really unexpected in kind of a good way,
Yeah.
but it really did change kind of just my immediate focus. So now that a lot of that stuff has been taken care of, I can hopefully go back to working on the actual features that I wanted to work on.
Yeah, and I mean, for listeners who may not know of some of the card numbers, and we're not talking about small numbers here either. When you say 100%, it's not like going from 2 to 4 users. I remember like you used to do tweets about the number of new users, and isn't it? It was like up to, I can't remember what the last
Yeah,
one was.
I can tell you right now, we're up to about 680,000 sites and about 470,000 users. So, and we're adding like, let's see what we're adding. I mean, we're adding. It's the number is just like I don't know. It's like 3 to 4 thousand new sites a day and about over 1,000 new users a day. Like it's just racking up. Especially this month is just because of all the stuff that's been going on. I think people have just been either they lost their jobs or they're furloughed or they're not having to work at the usual capacity that they previously worked at, so they have a lot of free time, and so they're all spinning up the little side projects or trying to hustle and get something going. And as you mentioned, card is a pretty fast way to do that. I mean, it's not, I would say, compared to some other tools, it may not be the most elaborate or the most powerful, but it is certainly fast. And I think if that is your goal right now, card is probably at the top of your list to just jump in and get something up there, and then you can move to a different tool later on if your needs outgrow what card can do. So we've been seeing a ton of that, and it's been interesting trying to keep up with it on my end.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to some of that other stuff in a second. But you mentioned that you were like gonna you're building out a complete support ticket system and stuff. Why not use some no code knowledge and try and build something with what you've got like to
Well, you
hand?
see, Ben, I'm dumb. All I know is code, so it's very difficult for me to like think outside the box in that way. And
I
also,
keep forgetting.
uh,
So
also to some extent, it needs to be some of the integration has to be a bit tighter, because if I'm going to start hiring people, I need them to be able to access other parts of kind of the administrative side of card to, help with, something goes wrong with the site. So just uh, building out, and it only took me like 2 or 3 days to actually do it, but like to actually uh, building this a bit deeply integrated in this particular instance made sense. Again, like I guess it only took a few days to do it. Really, the upgrading server infrastructure stuff was a lot more uh, tricky and taxing, just to get, not so much financially, but just coordinating, moving everything to to heavier duty stuff. So that wasn't fun, but it's done now.
Yeah, I bet that wasn't that wasn't what you wanted to be spending your time on. What are some of the most popular things you're seeing people spin up then, like in the
A lot
last?
of stuff related to COVID. So just like informative, like even really simple things, just like schools putting up quick pages, just explaining to the students, here's how you can access resources that we offer regarding this, or here's what's happening with respect to your education, things like that. And then as far as non-COVID stuff, I mean, it's like everything just increased. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just all the stuff that card has been used for, but just dialed up. Uh, People starting like little mini side business, little ideas that they had. You've been seeing those just pop up. I mean, people really, I think, are just trying to find ways to spend their time, or ways to make money out of their time. Whether either for fun or out of necessity. And it's been really cool being uh, sort of a conduit for some of that. Again, card isn't as powerful as some of these other tools, but I think it can serve as a good gateway if you're just starting out. And I've absolutely been seeing a lot of that, and it's been kind of an honor to be part of that, I guess, response to this whole situation.
Yeah, I imagine just like so many people thinking, well, there was that idea I was going to do if I ever left my job, and maybe I'm in that situation now, or like
Right.
trying something. I think, yeah, I think maybe some people don't even realize what card could actually do. Um, like I've done a few tutorials with card, and it's one of the tools we use in our boot camp for one of the lessons and one of the project submissions. I think I've built stuff that's like an actual like online shop. So you could do I think one of the clones was, what was it? It was like what's that thing called? Dollar Shave Club. It was basically like you can buy a
Yeah.
subscription to a product that you sell like physically, but you just integrate Gumroad, and because if you have Gumroad product buttons on your site, it just automatically pops up within that site
Right.
anyway. So it feels like a very integrated solution. So there's like you can purchase stuff. I set up the gift card system with card as like the front end um,
Right.
recently, which was like really simple.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
it's
so
funny you mentioned stuff like it's like the stuff that, especially that you were building, or especially early on, like is, I mean, it really pushed me to actually implement features to make that stuff better. So I mean, seeing what people like you and other people have done with it has actually been what's expanded its use cases. And it's like a feedback loop. I mean, you do stuff that kind of pushes it to its limits. I see what those limits are, and I try to build things into the system that would uh, at least make it better, or add functionality so you can do even more with it. But as far as like the use cases that you're mentioning, like, yeah, you can do a lot with it. I think one of the problems I've had is I've not been very good at surfacing some of the, like, the, I don't want to say crazy use cases, but let's say more elaborate use cases of card, just to
yeah,
show people really what it can do. So I mean, no, having things out there like MakerPad has been really great to just kind of show people, like, yeah, this is what you can do with this. I mean, AJ may suck at explaining it, but we do a good job. So like, uh, it's just, it's great having people out there who can do that. So I'm not having to do that myself, although I certainly need to. Uh, but yeah, and just some of the stuff that I've seen you build, and I've seen the sites that have come up from the courses that you've done. Those pop occasionally, and I'm just like, wow, this is incredible. Like I'm blown away by what people are doing with it, especially with people like yourself pushing the boundaries even further beyond what I thought was possible.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the support, and I think, like I said, I mean, we wouldn't be doing MakerPad if Carl wasn't around in the first place. So it's sort of
Which is so cool just to know that, like, wow, it
yeah,
is one of those things that keeps people like me going.
yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so I think me in the early days trying to do a bunch of things like the Zapier stuff and linking things together. I think I can't remember which way around it was, but then I started seeing you have like the direct to Airtable integrations, and those were the things that I definitely noticed that you were obviously seeing what I was building and then going, okay, I'll just make this a bit easier for Ben to do
Yeah.
with those things.
Well, because I mean, I never really thought like if you go back to like I have that whole making of thing I wrote years ago where when I was planning out card, really the main thing I thought it'd be used for is just like, hey, I'm gonna set up a quick little kind of pseudo business card type thing where I link to my crap everywhere, or I've got like a small business I just want to get a small quick presence spun up or whatever, and then soon as that kind of started moving along, like I saw the potential myself of some stuff beyond that. But then once it launched, man, like when people like you came along, like it just I was like, wow, I really did not set my sights high enough to what this thing can do, and that's
Yeah,
really been, like I said, driving it ever since.
yeah, I was just like, nope, I can do more with this. I'm gonna push this to whatever I want it to be like. I mean, yeah, it's those small steps as well that like you understand. Okay, this is how a site in a simple form would be. Okay, if you want like a form to do something else, you sort of see the pieces that then you start understanding how things talk to each other and how things like
Right.
integrate
See, this
with
is
each
why
other.
I said, but this is why I mean I joked about. I mean, I'm serious when I said, yeah, I'm dumb. That's why I built my own ticket system. The issue is like, uh, I tweeted recently that people who write code should try no code because I think it's a very different set of skills that you're making use of, and it's actually I think in some ways using different parts of your brain because when you're coding, you pretty much have the ability to do whatever you can bring whatever it is that you need into existence. Like you can, the basic building blocks are all there. You can code it. You can make it from scratch. When you're no code, though, there's you're improvising what based on what's already out there, which I think is very different from for me. Like I said, when I'm programming, I can do anything I want. But when you're no code, you're using no code to build a product. You're having to look at what's already out there and kind of say, okay, I can use this connected to this to do this and all this stuff. Like you have to use what's already in existence, and I think that's almost better in many ways because you're sort of dealing with the situation that you have versus someone who's programming who can kind of manifest a specific situation, but that takes longer and has a lot of its own pitfalls. Does that make sense? I mean, that sounds a little
Yeah, no, I think so.
highfalutin, but a little weird.
I think it does because it's like, well, I can build this thing that if I could code, I would build this whole like payment system and have all these things that would like allow me to do something on this site. But the first payment system that I ever used was his payment.makerpad.co, which is a card site that just has a type form embedded there that you pay. And that was
Right, you
that.
get
Like,
it done, and you get it done faster too. Instead of like, all right, we're
yeah,
gonna have to, draw up all these plans to build this elaborate system from scratch, versus, yeah, I'm just gonna crap this out in 15 minutes and be done with it, move on to the next thing. So it's like you're operating as a different level, which is why I think I have all these blind spots as to what card could be used for us because I don't think that way, even though I think I really need to. If that makes sense.
yeah, I guess it's just been tons of like ideas and then having things that do it's almost like just having the tools that did the 80% of what you needed and then you needed that extra tool to bring it in and then figuring out, oh, so embeds work like this, and then oh, Zapier works like this, And then from that, there are so many steps that you just take like 3 at a time. If you go, okay, now I realized what Zapier is, it like connects APIs together, and then you start learning about, okay, I can figure out what a webhook is,
Right.
and like you get more and more technical, but so quickly when you're in the no code rabbit hole that you don't really realize. I don't think.
Yeah, and I
'Cause-
think when you're coding, I think you get kind of stuck in your own world, and you don't look outside of it. So you're looking very much inward. Whereas I think with no code, you're having to look outward by design. Like you can't just stick with one tool. You can't just stick with card. You've got to look at other things like Webflow and whatnot to target. Uh, like if your card can do so much, but if you insist on only using card, you're going to be stuck in that world. But everyone who no codes doesn't just use card; they use other tools too, and can use the right set of tools to solve different problems, whether it's card or Webflow or Zapier or Airtable, whatever. You have the, I guess, mental flexibility to use whatever it is you need to use. Where I think when you're programming, that's a little harder. It gets a bit more dogmatic. You insist on using your language, your platform, your framework, whatever it is that you typically use, and so it's hard to get out of that space.
yeah, I do think there's probably a lot of that in no code. Like I think people probably know that I use Webflow, Zapier, MemberStack, and Airtable, and I talk about them a lot. It's just because that's what MakerPad is built in. So when you're
Right.
then, it's probably different when you have like a business and it's running and you have things that you have to do. It's then like, well, I have to use these tools, and I am constrained with the limitations of these tools because like everything's on here. Am I going to export like 1,400 users onto something else and
Yeah.
200 tutorials from this CMS to something else? I'm like, probably not, because with like programming, you build up some like technical debt and things like that, and processes in place that you're sort of like, yeah, just don't ever let anyone touch that piece. I just know how to do it because I
Yeah.
built it that way. It's
Right.
exactly the same with no code. Like if I had to pass this Webflow site to someone else and said, run it, this is how I've set it up. If they knew how like things should be set up, they'd think, yeah, I wouldn't have done it this way. This is a bit of a mess. Like it's better to start from scratch, but you don't do that when you first start. And I think it's probably similar with both.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. It just seems like the people I've seen who do no code tend to not get so deep into a stack. Like I think that maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just by virtue of the fact that no code is relatively new, and so they haven't had a chance to get really deeply entrenched in a specific stack or methodology or something. But at least right now, I'm really liking what I'm seeing with people just kind of bouncing between tools, using what they need to use to get the job done, which I think is how it should be across the board, whether you're no code or code.
Yeah, and I think there's like a really quick feedback loop as well with no code. That it means, okay, can I plug Typeform in on card? Yes, that works. Or no, it doesn't work. Let me try Airtable Forms. Yes, that works. No, it doesn't work. And that's taking you like 20 minutes to figure out. Whereas
And
with code,
maybe that's the difference. It's like the reduced amount of time, the feedback loop can move a lot quicker. So not you're not getting over invested. Like if you're programming to an API, which if you've done that, you know that you're having to read API documentation, kind of get in the heads of the developers who put that API together, so you can work out your implementation to interact with it. And that takes time. It's not something you can do in like, well, some people probably can, but you don't do it in like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. That's a few hours at least. Whereas with no code, like what you just described, that can take 15 minutes and you're done. You can switch between providers, just like that, like it's nothing. And I think that may be the differentiating factor overall.
yeah, I think also what you said was like you're not as invested in. It's like, oh
Yeah.
well, I spent months writing all this code. I don't want to, like, I can't let it go. And same is
Yeah.
true for like ideas. You've seen how many like sites I've had on card or have on card. There's hundreds now, but
Yeah.
there's like I
Yeah. So you,
tried
you
so
do
many
have quite a
things.
few.
Yeah, there's so many I tried in the early days because I was actually just using card as the thing I used to build the websites to spin up other ideas that maybe one day would take off, which never did. But it was like, okay, we'll only spend 20 minutes, half an hour, and a couple of hours like putting this together. And I just did it in a different style. Like sort of, I looked at this other website and just copied what I could. I tried like I think one of the sites I did in the initial card course was like the Stripe site because everyone loves Stripe. I was like, oh, I want
Yeah.
to try and get this, like the diagonal line that they have and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. I was like, I'm definitely going to try and do that, and I did in the end, which is great. But it was, yeah, I mean, you could
Yeah,
try
it
all
lets
these
you bounce.
ideas.
Like you don't have to overinvest in even an idea. Like, yeah, that makes sense. And then you're not if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You spent 15 minutes or or half hour, maybe an hour, throwing it together, launching it, whatever, and seeing what happens, as opposed to weeks or months and tons of money invested and time. And then like if
Yeah,
even halfway through that process, you realize the idea may not have legs, but you've already made it this
yeah,
far. You have to bring, and then it's just like, oh, you just wasted 6 months of your life on something that someone else could have spent 15 minutes on and gotten over with. They could have built it, tried it out, launched it. If it failed, then they've wasted an hour or so, but they've gained a lot more knowledge to offset that, and then they can move to the next thing.
yeah, exactly. I think it's the opposite of like, okay, the knowledge I gained in this hour comparatively, even if it fails, is a way bigger, like it's way bigger than if I spent 6 months. Yes, I did learn something, but it was more like a
Yeah,
painful
but
lesson
but
rather
but
than,
at what cost, right?
yeah, exactly.
Like 6 months, the embarrassment, the money, everything else, and the realization that how many other projects and things could you have done in that time had you taken a different approach?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's pros and cons to being able to do this because just because you can build it, maybe you shouldn't. But that's like a
Well, I mean,
different.
that is actually the thing I'm seeing now is because so many people are, like I said, stuck at home or furloughed or worse, laid off. Uh, they can, eh, with very little investment, just spin something up just to see what happens. Like it is. This is like the optimal time for no code, I think, because
Yeah,
especially if you're strapped for cash, you're not going to be able to pay developers or take the time to learn the code after in 6 months or something to build something to build your idea. Um, Whereas with no code, you don't have to invest a whole lot. You can do it very quickly, and I don't think the emotional burden of over investing in something is there because, like you said, it's like take an hour, get it done. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it's just an hour. And you didn't, you weren't trying to find the next thing that's going to feed your kids.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think yeah. I mean, we've definitely seen an uptick the last 6 weeks of people joining MakePad and things like that. So I think people are really paying attention to what can be done with no code.
Yeah, and I
So
think it's not even just. Sorry, I don't think it's not just us either. I mean, I saw things like I'm sure Webflow is up. I think Wix is up. I think everybody in this space has kind of felt this surge as people try to get into this. So it's definitely a universal thing right now.
yeah, for sure. So what would remind me what the big updates were that you were working on? I think there's
So
probably
so
one.
pre COVID-19, what I was going to do, which I will be getting back to soon, thankfully. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so there were three major things. I would say the most pertinent to no code was the data sources thing, which I think I talked to you about a few months ago.
yeah,
The idea being, in lieu of only using like iframes or something to pull in content, there would actually be a built-in way into Card that would let you dynamically pull in content from like Airtable or other sources. So if you wanted to present content from an Airtable, you can do so, but in like a native Card style using elements and stuff that are already there, as opposed to just dumping in an iframe and relying on the styling of that. And I think I have a good chunk of that already planned out, like how I'm going to implement it. And I was about ready to start on like really deep diving into it, but then all this stuff hit. So that was not great. But like I said, things are kind of getting a little bit more settled now, so I can finally get back to work on that. There were two other things. One of those was more features for kind of agency setups, because I see a lot of people now using Card to build sites for clients, and there's a lot of stuff that comes with managing that type of arrangement that Card doesn't have right now that people are kind of figuring their workarounds for. So I'm going to try to cater to that a bit better with some of the stuff that's associated with that. And the final thing is the ability for people to create their own templates for their own use and for other people's use. So uh, you can build a template, you can use it yourself. So when you go to the little template selection screen, you can see your own templates that you've created. Uh, and then you can also share those with other people on Card or sell them, which is a big thing because I've seen people selling templates on Card, which I think is fantastic. It's just that
Yeah.
there's no formal uh, process in there to do that. So they've, again, had to come up with their own workarounds to make up for deficiencies in the platform, which I think is both cool and kind of sad that I have these deficiencies there, but I'll address them. And part of the template thing will go a long way to do that. So I think it will initially manifest in people just having the ability to kind of set up their own mini template stores, and then I think it will culminate in having an official Card template marketplace on site with kind of like a curated selection of stuff. So pretty big things coming.
Yeah, they're not three small features for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I did that card course, part of my offering there was I'll give you the this was I think it was December 2018, and I was like I'll send people the templates if there was like 20 templates. So
Oh
for
yeah,
every
I remember that.
for every person who signed up, they would have to like say, yeah, I want all the templates. So I'd have to duplicate each template, send it
Yeah, and then
individually.
transfer it. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
It,
that
seeing
was
that though, man, that is actually seeing that, and then I think there were some issues sometimes with people like didn't have enough like site slots left on their account, so like I couldn't get all the templates. What's going on? Like, oh crap, man, I
yeah.
definitely need to address that.
Build my own system in Airtable to show who'd been sent them and who'd accepted them and all that sort of stuff as well.
See, Ben, like you've been on the forefront of pushing me into doing things I didn't think about, so it's been
Yeah,
I've
but
been
what if
appreciative.
what if I was pushing just the wrong thing? It's just like, well, this is what Ben wants. Card is what Ben's been asking to have, but
Well, the interesting thing is that I mean, a lot of the things that you've pushed I mean, I think you may have been one of the few people who've like pushed for a lot of different things that I didn't think of, but there've been other people who have pushed smaller pieces of what you've been pushing for. So it's like it's funny how there's almost like this uh universal view of what cards should be that spans across a whole bunch of different users, and it's almost like the same thing, which is really strange. But it
yeah,
could just be that it could just be coincidence, but I don't know. It's pretty cool.
yeah, it's funny actually because I think even something like Webflow. So I mean, Webflow and Card are definitely not like in my eyes competing products because I think they're just for completely different things. They
Right.
both help you build websites. That's like probably one of the only things they share together. And I think there's just different use cases for both. But I think there's some level of functionality on the Card side that people are like, yeah, well, I could do this in Webflow, but it's like it's just bigger and clunkier than I need it to be because I just need it to be
Right.
like really small and sleek to do this thing in
Right.
15 minutes rather than maybe taking a couple of hours and perfecting some of the stuff. And I think some of those use cases, like the things that we've been talking about and what you're building, are probably towards that goal. There's like this is just the mini smaller version of this, and then you can build out the bigger version. And I think it's just
Right.
like,
And I mean, and I've been pretty open about the idea. Look, card is not meant for everything. Like you can push it pretty far, but at some point you got to graduate to something bigger. Like that's it. and that's why even the way cards pricing works, like I don't try to lock you in. Like there's the full expectation that you may use card for a while, but then you may move on to something else because it will no longer meet your needs because your needs have grown, which I think is fair as opposed to me trying to trap you and say, well, you can kind of get this complex thing working, but you've got to go through these insane hoops using embeds and stuff like this. Like, no, just use Webflow, use Square. Go use something that's more appropriate for what you want to do. I'm not going to try to keep you here and force you to do things in a subpar manner when I know some other service out there can do it better. And I think that's why it works so well. And I think that's why people continue to use Card because they know they can use it for these smaller things and then eventually move on to something bigger if they want to.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also like surely for your sanity, for your workload, for everything else, you don't want to have to then like it's not you're still a one man shop, right? And you don't want to have to then
For now, my business partner from other projects has pretty much had to go full time on Card as well, handling content moderation. Like he handles that entire thing now, which you don't think about it until
you
actually
know,
when a Card launched on Product Hunt is actually when I realized content moderation would be a very large factor because in the span of like 24 hours, I think we had at that point there was like maybe 10 or 20 new sites per day, which is hilarious compared to what we get now. But in the span of like a couple days, we had like 1,000 or 2,000 new sites, and I was like, well, what if someone posts something they shouldn't? We need to
yeah,
have systems in place for that. So that's actually where the genesis of the moderation stuff comes in. So my business partner has now fully taken over that entire aspect of it. So it technically Card is still one man, as in myself building this thing, but that is very quickly going to change because just the scale is not going to permit that to go on.
yeah. So, um, yeah, but I mean it's still for what you want to build, the company you want to build, you've still got to like make trade-offs, right? You don't want to be the tool that can do everything for everyone. You just like
Right.
carving out the smaller piece that you like and you get surprised by and sort of help facilitate.
Yeah, which I think is true for anyone wanting to build a product. That's what you need to do. Don't try to be all things to all people. Pick a niche and just go for it. Like just carve out your niche and work on it. And don't fall into the trap of feature creep because that will take you out. Because then you just won't have enough time and resources to do those things properly. I mean, unless you do get the time and resources, which is another thing. Uh,
Yeah,
and then you'll just kind of dilute what you were good at. So if Card tried to be a Webflow or something, wouldn't work. Just wouldn't work. It would just be better to look at what Card is good at and really just enhance it and perfect it, which is what I've been trying to do.
yeah. Well, it certainly shows in the product. I really appreciate you coming on. Sadly, we have to close it there. But if people are trying to find
Yeah,
you
well, that was
online,
my fault for not understanding time zones. So
no
sorry
problem.
about
It
that.
happens. Yeah. So just tell the people where to find you and where they can find Card.
Sure. So you can find Card at card.co, CARRD.co. And you can find me pretty much just on Twitter at AJLKN, which
Awesome.
is, yeah, that's about where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, Ben, really appreciate it, man. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. You can find us online at makerpad.co or on Twitter at makerpad. We'd love to hear if you enjoyed this episode and what we should do next.